What is up, Steeler Nation? We are back for another week. Well, I guess the end of the week because we just had a show. Man, this week has just been a blur for me. But before you know it, Steeler season will be here. You know, we love to bring on the insiders and get their opinions. So we have a very special guest today. This is Mic'd Up Sports One. How are you today?
I'm good. It has been a bit of a blur. You're right. We had 2 championships crowned, NHL and NBA, so it's been a big sports week. The Pirates struggling again up and down that roller coaster ride that always is the Pittsburgh Pirates. I guess usually it's down, so at least we have some twists and turns now, which is good, at least in the Pittsburgh sports world. But as always, Steelers, move the needle. So excited to bring on somebody, like you said, who was Steelers insider for a long time, former ESPN radio host, and has some great connections and insight into the business. So it should be a fun show today, man, just like our past handful.
Yeah, most definitely. Talk about some camp news and just kind of get, I always like having guests on. We have David Todd coming up next. Sammy, this is the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. Let them know. Play it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Steelers Crazy.
Aaron Smith shields. Flacco, Polamalu takes it home. Super Bowl 43. Pittsburgh might be bound for that thanks to number 43.
The sickest Pittsburgh Steelers podcast. Sports entertainment like no other. It's gonna be sick.
Yeah, like we said, we love bringing the insider guys on. He is former ESPN radio and Steelers host. He went to Yale, and I see Harvard Business School. He is none other than David Todd.
David. Hey guys, great to be with you.
Hey, thanks for coming on. I hope that that intro was good enough for you because, having Yale on your resume is one thing, and then I seen when I was reading your bio, Harvard Business School, I'm just like, that's amazing.
It was the career path from Yale to Harvard to Sports Talk Radio is not the tried and true beaten path.
Who do you root for, Yale or Harvard, when they play?
I bleed blue. I played soccer at Yale, so it's always the undergrad. So yeah, definitely root for the Eli.
Interesting dynamic there. Had to ask that one.
Yep. Definitely. So back to some Steeler news. Alex Highsmith contract situation. Do you expect it to get done before the season?
Yeah, look, I think Omar is kind of on record as wanting to get this done. I think people who follow the Steelers have some disparate views about Highsmith and how good a player he is. Clearly, look, he's a third-round pick, and he's a guy who has contributed to the Steelers. Personally, I don't think the guy's a superstar or going to be a superstar. I think if he had a year like Bud Dupree had on his exit year with the Steelers, that would be, a fantastic year. You look at last year, I know everybody has cited these numbers, his sacks with or without TJ in the lineup, significantly different. I think the guy's a really good player. But to me, a really good player on that defense is a guy who should make $10 million a year for 3 or 4 years, not a guy, 15 and above. So I actually think the Steelers will probably end up getting there. I think a number, in the 13 to 15 range is where they will end up. But to me, I probably wouldn't go there.
I know Jordan has another question, but I'm going to jump in really quickly. I tweeted something, I think it was yesterday morning. I always thought that if you put a great quarterback behind center, like Ben Roethlisberger, you can kind of, throw some receivers out there and they're going to be pretty successful naturally because you have that Hall of Fame quarterback. I'm sort of wondering if this same thing applies to a guy you put on the other side of TJ Watt. Is Highsmith maybe overvalued because of that? You think you can just stick a guy out there next to TJ Watt and he would play well as long as TJ's healthy?
Sure. I think that's part of it. I mean, also, you're playing next to Cam if you're lining up there typically. So you've got that going for you as well. I mean, look, there are lots of kind of dynamic intangibles or tangibles and intangibles to think about in this whole process. And the Steelers have not kind of really found a guy. And I do think, look, we see the cap go up, incrementally every year. And I don't think it's something that kind of we as analysts think about enough about just inflation of salaries, right? So if you just look back 5 years ago and you think about, look, the quarterback position is the obvious one, and I think it's way overblown. But if you look at other positions, we see some positions, in the interior line or the inside linebackers or even safeties and running backs, of course, where, the numbers versus 5 or 7 years ago haven't changed all that much. But we see the cap is up 20%, in this period of time if you take out COVID. So there's more money to go around. So look, if they pay Highsmith $15 million, I don't think it's going to, blow the budget. I just wouldn't be guaranteeing more than that initial year of the contract or 2 years. And I would keep drafting for the position.
Definitely. What are some of the topics that you've been following in camp that have been most intriguing to you?
Well, look, obviously the offensive tackle position is going to be interesting, and I do think there are cap ramifications how that's going to play out, because Chooks is a guy who's not necessarily an elite guy. Sorry, guys, did I cut out on some of that? I don't know if I froze.
For a second,
you could still.
Okay. That's showbiz, baby.
This is showbiz.
Dan Moore. I like Dan Moore. I think Dan Moore might be a little undervalued by Steeler Nation right now. I think Dan Moore playing next to Dotson, facing the primetime rushers coming off that side. I think Dan Moore's still a work in progress and could be a very capable guy. I assume that we're going to open the season with the Steelers' #1 pick entrenched at that left tackle spot, and you're going to see Chooks at the right tackle spot. Now, the odds of the offensive line staying as healthy as it did last year, basically zero, right? So I assume Dan Moore will get on the field. What will be interesting to me is in 2024, is there a chance that Chooks becomes a cap casualty and Dan Moore is a guy who swings over to the right side? So I think all of that's that's the #1 primary thing. I think the Steelers' interior of this line this year should be really good. I think everybody likes what they've done in terms of adding, the physical presence and depth on the offensive line. So look, that's the #1 positive. I think what we've seen. The other thing is the Allen Robinson deal. Big fan. I really think Allen Robinson's a guy who can be a very helpful, capable, and importantly, veteran addition to this group. And with a relatively young squad on the offensive side of the ball, I think Allen Robinson can really be a great addition. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Anthony Miller. Obviously, Calvin Austin's one we all want to see what he can do as we get to camp. But I do like those two things on the offensive side of the ball, and expect big things.
Definitely. We're hanging out here with David, Todd on the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy. Make sure you follow us below there on Instagram, the Sick Podcast Steelers. Subscribe on YouTube, Twitter as well at Sick Pod Steelers. David, I think the most scrutinized member of the Steelers last season was none other than Matt Canada. And I'm not sure he did himself any favors yesterday when he went on 93.7 The Fan. And he had some puzzling comments. He said, "It's not like I'm coming in here and deciding what the offensive plan is." Obviously, there's more context around that, but can you decode that for us over here?
Yeah, I think Pony took a shot at if it's not your job, whose job is it? And look, with everything in the Steelers, and I know it is it's the objective of a lot of us in the media and who talk about the team to kind of pin success or blame on individuals. But I really do think the Steelers work as collaboratively as any organization you're going to see. And it's, I was surprised. Maybe I wasn't surprised, but the fact that he mentioned art as part of the decision-making process of how the Steelers want to operate as a football team strategically. Look, I understand that Art puts parameters on the business side, but it's true that, we saw in years past where Art said, we want to get back to our roots. We want to be a more physical football team. We want to run the football. So Matt acknowledging that was one. And then, from Mike and watching the success from the end of last season, there's no surprise that, watching them go 7-2, average about 150 yards a game on the ground, that they're going to try and build on that. So, look, Matt Canada is an easy punching bag. Matt Canada is a deserved punching bag to some degree. And Matt Canada is going to live or die, in his career as a member of the Steelers organization, going to live or die on Kenny Pickett's success and that offense success, but really Kenny Pickett's success this year.
Yeah, I'm not so sure Art's calling the plays over there, but who knows? He's got a hand in everything, that guy. I wouldn't put it past him.
You never know.
Any Rooney, for that matter. That's
Bluetooth in his ear up there.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Maybe a preseason game, like an XFL game, something they do in those games. Make it spice it up a little bit. Why not? David, I want to talk a little bit about the Steelers' lack of explosiveness on offense. I think you and I have been on the same page. I follow a lot of you guys have been in the media for a long time, and I think anytime I mention lack of explosiveness, I have 50 people responding to me saying, "What are you talking about? There's Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, and these guys, are some of the best deep threats in the NFL." I certainly don't feel the same way. I still think you're going to have 10, 15 play drives to score touchdowns. Do you see that changing this year? Is Calvin Austin a guy who comes in and changes that?
Well, so I think there are a couple of different things here. As you guys know, and we've talked about on Twitter, I've got a pet peeve that the Steelers have not used the middle of the offense, the middle of the field between numbers forever. Since the last couple of years with Ben, the beginning of the season, we saw them start to do a bit more of that with Kenny as the season moved on. And Kenny taking shots in that kind of mid 10 to 20 yard range between the numbers. And I just think you can do so many things if you're able to attack that area of the football field that gives you so many other options as an offense. And it was one of the things, I mean, if you saw the route trees that Deontay and George Pickens were running for so much of the season, they're very few in-breaking routes that they were running. So I think I'm a huge fan. I think he's explosive as hell. But we haven't seen him get the ball in space. We haven't seen him be able to catch the ball on the run and put up any kind of yak numbers. We know what kind of threat Pickens is to catch the ball anywhere. But again, we haven't seen him do a lot with the ball in his hands. So, I think the Steelers have to continue to try to open up the middle of the field. And I do think, ideally, if Allen Robinson and Calvin Austin are able to bring skills that they've shown in the past, obviously with Austin just in college at Memphis, but if they're able to bring those skill sets to this offense, and then you throw in a Washington, to go with Pat and with Najee and Warren, it feels to me like the pieces are in place. Now, whether the offensive design is in place, going back to what you talked about earlier with Canada, that's what's going to make this team successful. Because look, if we look back at the numbers last year, I don't know that a lot of people recognize that they were very successful on third downs. And as you pointed out, look, they had a lot of time-consuming drives, but you just can't bank on always having 10 to 15 play drives. I mean, that was Dick LeBeau's bread and butter was, look, give them whatever they want for 5 yards all day long, but teams aren't going to put 12 to 15 play drives up against us consistently. So, I think the Steelers have to show some capability of hitting home runs now and then to make this offense more explosive.
Yeah, good points for sure. If you had that pie chart, a lot of it would be probably on Kenny Pickett and Matt Canada, maybe opposed to the lack of explosiveness from the playmakers. Jordan, go ahead.
So a little bit of draft talk. I think inevitably everyone's going to say, getting Joey Porter at 32 was the best draft pick. But, I think from round 7, even getting Corey Trice, I think that, this draft, Omar for the first time knocked it, this draft from top to bottom, round 1 through 7 out of the park. Personally, for David, who was your favorite draft pick of the Steelers?
Well, I loved the Washington pick. Just, I might have picked him at 32 or whatever it was. I really felt like he would be a great addition to what the Steelers wanted to do offensively. So getting him in the third round, home run for me. I'm with you on Trice. I mean, the people I've talked to who've seen him feel like, look, the Steelers made some moves immediately that makes you think Trice is a lock to make the roster.
Yeah.
And whether he sees the field, we'll see. But certainly a winner. It's hard to find. It's hard to look at the draft after all the discussion that we had coming in about kind of things we thought the Steelers should do, and say, they butchered this in any area. I mean, look, I would have been a fan potentially of them taking an edge, but look, it fell in their lap here in the off season. They got a third, a guy. I don't think Herbig is really going to be at the end of the day. If I had to pick one pick I didn't love, maybe just the size and how they're planning on using him initially. His brother thinks he's the greatest athlete in the game. And if that's the case, then it'll turn out to be a great pick, and I'm wrong, but I'm not quite sure that that pick's going to look great at the end of the day. But, across the board, as you said, between Omar and Andy, I think they and in the free agent market, I think kind of an A across the board for these guys.
All right. So I like that. The Washington, I mean, I feel like he's an extra offensive lineman, to be honest. Like, and it's crazy. We talked about on our last podcast about how deep, like, the tight end, like, so hopefully Matt Canada could, expand the playbook for us this season. David, best free agency move for the Steelers?
Well, I mean, look, I do think it's a bit underrated what Kevin did last year in his additions on the offensive line. I think people have kind of overlooked, the success that they had the second half of the year with Cole and Daniels in the interior. But I think the addition of Seumalo, another, big, nasty interior guy who, boy, is it Jason Kelce? Man, did he have great things to say about playing next to him for the Eagles. So I think the Steelers have done, the necessary steps to really revamp that offensive line. You add Washington as an inline tight end there. To me, that clearly kind of head and shoulders number one. But I do not want to discount kind of the late addition that they had with Golden and getting him on such a cheap deal. If he's got anything left in the tank, that may turn out dollar for dollar to be the most valuable addition that they made.
Yeah, I think bringing in, these veteran guys, not only in the locker room, it's mentorship, but at the end of the day, if at that age, Allen Robertson, Patrick Peterson, I mean, these guys, they're producing. It's a win-win in the locker room because they can lead these young players, and then they're still producing on the field. And I was just looking at Patrick Peterson's stats, and I was like, man, I mean,
had a good year last year. Really,
he had it. Yeah, I mean, it's serviceable. I'll take it.
I thought he had a Joe Hayden-esque year.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the probably slightly different formula for Andy and Omar, in the sense that we didn't see Kevin sign too many guys that age. And I'm all for it. If you can look, I don't think anybody's expecting to get 3 years out of either Patrick Peterson or Allen Robinson, certainly Golden. Yeah. I mean, these guys, look, they're in, serve a purpose. The Steelers were lacking depth. They made some great additions. They made some good signings. And now they can go back to the well at those positions again over the next year or two and continue to kind of turn the roster over. But if those guys can come in and play at a reasonably high level, then the whole free agent offseason will be, a big home run.
Absolutely. David, I cannot let you out of here, of course, without putting you on the spot. I know we're jumping right into it. Give me a Steelers record prediction, 2023.
Guys, I got to tell you, I have gone back and forth on this because I think there are two factors that kind of I'm weighing on both sides. The positive is, look, I think this is an improved team, but they ended up with a good record last year. I mean, it's not ideal, but I think the record was better than the ability of the team. So I think they overperformed in terms of a record last season, and I love their schedule this year. You look at the AFC. The AFC is a bear. The quarterbacks in the AFC. I feel like I repeat this on Twitter once every 2 weeks. But with Mahomes, with Josh Allen, with Herbert, with Burrow, with Aaron Rodgers now, with Trevor Lawrence, and you just go on and on. They're seven or eight elite quarterbacks. If Russell Wilson comes back and has a good season, you just look and say, Kenny Pickett could play well this year and be the 7th or 8th best quarterback in the AFC. And Kenny Pickett could play well this year. And if Deshaun Watson has a good year, Kenny Pickett could be the 4th best quarterback in the AFC North. It's conceivable. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get from all these guys. But, Lamar's done great things in the past. Watson's done great things. And certainly Joe Burrow's probably everybody's, 2 or 3 best, 2nd or 3rd best quarterback in the NFL. So I think the division's a bear. If the Steelers can go 3-3 in the division, I think they're going to win 10 or 11 games. So give me the Steelers 3-3 in the division and 10 wins. And if they're able to do better than that in the division, I'll take the upside.
Is that a playoff spot? Is that a 7 seed?
I think look, if they can go 3-3 in division and win 10, I think 10-7 will get you in. But again, you just hope you're going to have to nobody wants to be scoreboard watching the second week of the season. But, oh, my God, you're really going to have to hope the NFC wins the interconference matchups against the AFC.
Yeah, speaking of scoreboard watching, I have some problems because I'm doing it with the Milwaukee Brewers and Cincinnati Reds right now in freaking June. So July.
Easy. The Reds are making it uncomfortable.
They really, really are. Hey, you made it comfortable for us today. We really appreciate it. Hey, tell us where people can find you, what you got going on.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at David M. Todd, or if you want the Pirates account, it's at DT on Pirates. Doing some different things, and we'll see if we're back on the air a little bit more, maybe during the coming football season.
We'd love to hear it.
Appreciate your time, David.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good times, Jordan. And obviously, hey, listen, we got someone else who's predicting a winning season for the Steelers. That'd be yet again another winning season for Mike Tomlin. But, I think when both of us did our season predictions, we're kind of right with them. 10-ish wins, sneaking into the playoffs. We always say once you get into the playoffs, you never know what happens. Heck, look at the Florida Panthers. Although I think hockey is a little different than football at the end of the day. But it's the Steelers team that have made runs. Super Bowl winning team, of course, is 6 seed.
We've seen it.
You never know, man. And so I think Steelerland would take playoffs this year, right? All day.
Yeah, I think that, making the playoffs is one thing, but me personally, I need one playoff win this year. Make the playoffs, win a playoff game next year. Like I said, AFC Championship. And it's funny because we were talking about too, just want to shout out to all the viewers, man. We've just been really growing and, just trying to put out content, bringing on good guests, breaking down the current topics and, Steelerland, as we like to call it. So we really appreciate all of our new subscribers. So if you're ever looking for us, check. My hand's not in the thing, but it's funny because I do read the comments that people leave and people are saying, I guess I say definitely. So maybe we need to put that on the start.
I was going to start a definitely jar. I was actually going to bring it up to Julian and Sammy after the show because I heard one again.
But I'm sticking with it.
I think at this point, it's just, you just got to overdo it for laughs at this point. But I was saying, I was literally going to say after this show to our studio that we're going to start a definitely jar. And you're going to have to put a quarter in every single time you do it. I know they're getting a laugh right now. I know they're getting a laugh.
Definitely. But yeah, I mean, this is fun, man. And this is why we do it, man. The Steeler Crazy Sick podcast. Make sure you subscribe. We're coming every week. New episodes, new guests. Best in the biz, baby. Play it, Sammy.
Definitely.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.